All right, let's dive into the psychology of a generation that so often gets lost in the shuffle, the one that feels like a cultural footnote, kind of sandwiched between two giants. Yeah, today we're talking all about Generation X.
I mean, think about it for a second. It feels like our entire cultural conversation is dominated by the boomers who shaped the post-war world, and then the millennials who basically defined the digital age. They're like these two massive, loud bookends on our society.
Exactly. What about the people born roughly between 1965 and 1980? They're often the quiet ones, the ones just getting stuff done while everyone else is arguing. So, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the very unique psychology of Gen X.
To really get them, you have to start with their childhood. That whole invisible thing, it wasn't really a choice. It was a core part of how they grew up, something forged in the quiet of an empty house. This is the foundational experience right here. See, as divorce rates were climbing and more women were entering the workforce, millions of kids started coming home to an empty house. They'd let themselves in with that key on a string around their neck and were just left to their own devices for hours. And we're not talking about a rare thing here. The sheer scale is pretty staggering. By 1984, it was estimated that 7 million kids were regularly unsupervised after school. This wasn't some small trend. It was basically a nationwide social experiment in self-reliance.
And all that time alone had a really profound psychological effect. It created what researchers call a high-contingency environment. Fancy term, but what it means is simple. If you broke a glass, well, you had to clean it up. If you forgot your homework, tough luck, nobody was there to remind you. Your brain was being hardwired from a really young age to understand that actions have direct, immediate, and unavoidable consequences.
Now, this early self-reliance didn't happen in a bubble. It was happening at the same time as this constant stream of disillusionment from the outside world, forging a worldview that was armored with a deep sense of realism.
Just look at this timeline. While they were at home learning to fend for themselves, they were watching every single major institution fail on the evening news. They saw presidents lie. They saw their parents split up. They saw corporations betray loyal employees. And they saw the government just fumbling one major crisis after another. Trust was definitely not a given.
So all that experience created a very specific mindset. It's not that they're cynics who just assume the worst will happen. Now, they're realists. They know the worst can happen because they watched it happen over and over again. They'll hope for the best, but you better believe they are quietly prepared for the worst. This realism also completely shaped their relationship with being seen. Remember, they grew up before the internet, a time when your embarrassing moments were known only to a handful of people. Privacy wasn't something you had to turn on or protect. It was just the natural state of being. So this modern urge to share every single thought online, to them it feels inherently risky, not liberating. Irony and a dry sense of humor, well, those became their shields to keep the world at a safe distance. So you take that independent, realistic mindset, and it translates directly into a very unique and pragmatic approach to work and especially to authority. Their boomer parents were basically sold a promise. If you work hard and you're loyal to your company, the company will take care of you. But Gen X watched that promise get absolutely shattered by wave after wave of layoffs. They learned a very different lesson. Loyalty is for people, not for corporations. The only real job security is your own competence. And you see this play out in the workplace all the time. A fancy title means nothing to them if you can't actually do the job. They will follow a skilled leader into battle, but they have absolutely zero patience for authority that hasn't been earned. After all, they grew up watching a lot of people in charge make some really terrible decisions. And this skepticism just kept getting reinforced. As they were trying to build their careers, they got slammed by one economic catastrophe after another. The dot-com bust, the 2008 meltdown. Each crisis was just another lesson hammering home that core belief. Security is fragile, and the only person you can truly count on is yourself. And this brings us to what is maybe their most unique, and you could argue their most important role in society today. They are a living, breathing bridge between two completely different worlds. Look at this. It just perfectly captures the massive shift they lived through. They are the last generation to remember a time when finding an answer required actual physical effort. It meant going to the library, figuring out the card catalog, and hunting down a book on a shelf. They learned the old way, right before they had to master the new one. All that effort actually had a huge psychological benefit.
Cognitive scientists call it deeper encoding. Basically, when knowledge is hard-won, when you have to work for it, it sticks in your brain better. It gets integrated more deeply. This is why Gen X has such a different relationship with information. They remember when it was a scarce resource, not just an infinite stream you scroll through.
They're fluent in both languages. They understand how to fix things with their hands and how to write a line of code. They remember what life was like before social media, and they helped build the very platforms we all use today. They are that essential, critical link between the analog past and our digital present. And that's the perfect metaphor, isn't it? You don't really pay much attention to a bridge. It's just there, doing its job. That's Gen X. They're the functional, critical infrastructure of our society, often taken for granted, quietly holding everything together.
And that leaves us with one final, and I think really crucial question. This generation, the one with a foot in both the analog and digital worlds, well, they're not going to be around forever. What knowledge, what kind of perspective, what quiet competence do we lose when that bridge is no longer there to connect us? It's something to think about.